Hey, Bruin fans, want to go behind the scenes with your favorite teams and athletes? How about getting exclusive merch and opportunities to enter sweepstakes like sideline access at the Rose Bowl? Introducing Blue and Gold Society, UCLA Athletics fan membership program created to support Bruin student athletes. Members receive benefits like exclusive gear, videos featuring insider stories, and incredible experiences courtesy of UCLA Athletics. Sign up today at blueandgoldsociety.com.
Good afternoon. We are doing it live right here, getting right down to business, doing more at 4 every weekday afternoon, right after Guy Benson at 3, and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. A hey-ya kind of day on Wall Street today. Stocks finishing at record highs. The market shrugging off that dramatic downward revision to the U.S. jobs numbers. Investors turning their focus of attention to inflation and next week's big meeting by the Federal Reserve, where it's widely expected the Fed will be lowering short-term interest rates. The Dow today coming in for a closing gain of nearly 200 points, selling at an all-time high 45,711. The S&P 500 of 17, good enough for a record high close at 6,513. And the NASDAQ continues on a roll after hitting a record high yesterday, up another 81 points today at 21,879. The yield in the 10-year note is at 4.08%. Apple did not participate in the rally today, despite the big announcement they made about the iPhone 17 and all that. Apple shares pulling back more than $3 at $234 and change. Gold hitting record highs today. Investors continue to bet on a September rate cut from the Federal Reserve, and that is helping to boost the price of gold in a big way. Got above $3,700 an ounce before pairing gains, and looks like gold right now is hovering at around $3,662 and change. Shares in a digital advertising firm, QMM Holdings, skyrocketed more than 2,300% today after the firm announced it would create a $100 million digital assets treasury, starting with Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana. A lot of companies are doing this. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Looks like QMM, which trades on the NASDAQ, closed the day at 207, about a 1,700% increase since the day's opening bell. The job picture very much in focus now. For the first time since the 2020 pandemic lockdowns, there are now more unemployed people than job openings in the United States. The Labor Department revising downward 911,000 jobs over 12 months of already reported jobs data. That's the largest revision in history, which, of course, also covers part of the Biden administration. The Fed is expected to lower rates next week to address signs of a slowing labor market. I'll talk about that, and I'll talk about that with prominent Los Angeles area economist Dr. Christopher Thornberg, founding partner of Beacon Economics, headquartered here in Los Angeles. Apple debuting the iPhone 17 lineup, as well as new Apple Watches and AirPods, but failed to excite Wall Street. The stock was down about 1.5%. Oracle taking the spotlight today, falling short of expectations with its latest earnings report. But Oracle stock moved higher. In fact, had its best day since 1999. Turning to the Middle East now, Israel's Air Force carrying out a strike on Hamas's senior political leadership in Qatar. Sharp escalation that took the fight to a country closely aligned with the U.S. and risks derailing the talks to resolve the war in Gaza and free the hostages, according to the Wall Street Journal. I'll discuss the latest developments in the Middle East with Middle East expert Dan RAVIV, former network news correspondent, author of Spies Against Armageddon, Every Spy a Prince, and his latest book falls into the business category, The Quest for Significance. Dan RAVIV will be joining me live later this hour to discuss the latest news in the Middle East. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, today's record-shattering rally on Wall Street, Bitcoin, cryptos, and the whole works now. John NAJARIAN is with us live now. Dr. J, as he's known on the major financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion, author of the book It's Not an Option with his brother Pete. He also played for the Bears, so still reeling from last night's loss to the Vikings. John NAJARIAN, thank you very much for coming to the line this afternoon.
Great to be on with you, Frank. Thank you very much.
What a day today, a trifecta, record-shattering day on Wall Street, despite this concerning jobs report. Give us your reaction to this latest news here.
Well, the markets seem to have already priced in that big adjustment from the BLS. And I guess, given that two of the largest adjustments to the downside in history were under her watch. You can kind of understand why the president may have fired the person who was in charge of that previously, because it's kind of suspicious that all these revisions are downward. In under her reign, there were substantial, over 2 million, just in the last, from basically March of 2024 till April of this year, she had over 1.5 million of people that had been told, or we were told, that they had jobs, and in fact they did not. That seems an awful lot more like fraud than it seems like just a clerical error. And it was month after month after month. So I think the markets dealt with it pretty well, but none of us were happy about it.
On the air live with John NAJARIAN. Dr. J's, he's known on the major television financial networks and a longtime contributor on this program. Record highs across the board for the major stock market averages. Gold also hitting record highs above $3,700 an ounce. Your reaction to that? Other big news here today.
Yeah, well, gold is likely to catch an even bigger lift if indeed the Fed makes a half-point cut on the September 17th meeting. It's a two-day meeting, 16, 17, next week. And if we see something that large, a half-point cut, that's going to be great for stocks in the mortgage space. We saw a lot of them starting to move pretty dramatically today. And I would think that they could move a lot more if they get the news that they hope to get, because 25 basis points already priced in. 50 basis points, especially with an adjustment of over 919,000 jobs, I think that makes it even more so. And it does put a lot of pressure on the Fed about how the rest of their tools may have betrayed them as well. It might not just be the labor market, but that is one of the primary things that they do have to watch.
On the air live with John NAJARIAN, who also has the laser eyes on, has had for quite some time. But what about cryptos here? We see the NASDAQ at a record high this week, but Bitcoin well off its all-time high. We keep hearing about this correlation that's been noted between the NASDAQ and cryptos, particularly Bitcoin. But here we have Bitcoin at around 111 here at the moment, 111.4 or thereabouts, well off its all-time high, which was fairly recent, above 124,000. What are your thoughts on the cryptos here?
Yeah, I think it was noteworthy that Tom Lee, the chairman of FundStrat and the chairman of Bitmine Immersion Technologies, BMNR, was on CNBC this morning. And Tom was, as he usually is, very bullish on Bitcoin itself, saying he thought it could double this year, even though we only have a little over 3 months left in the year. He thought we could see 200 this year. Right after he said that, we had a small lift out of the market, but then a pretty substantial sell-off. A lot of folks, as it lifted to 12,200 this morning, were not buyers, but were overcome with the selling pressure that hit and took it back down to 110,000 before it finished, as you say, or never really finishes. It trades 24 hours a day. But as it went back through 11,000, it seems to be really trading sideways here. And one of his explanations for that was that the Fed has stayed on the sidelines for 7 or 8 months in a row now. And he thinks that once they move, we'll see some more movement out of Bitcoin.
On the air live with John NAJARIAN. What about these companies that are creating these digital assets treasuries, including the latest today, QMMM, which had a big splash today, up nearly 2,000%. Yesterday was Octo, which had another eye-popping run-up. What do we need to know about those two and your thoughts about this trend?
Well, I just looked it up before I came on with you, and they have these digital asset treasuries, which many people refer to as DATs, are certainly in vogue right now. They've raised over $16 billion. And the average move, once a firm does this, has been somewhere between 25 and 40% when they've made such an announcement. Some have obviously gone much more than that, but this is the average. So I think eventually you're going to run out of people that need that kind of diversification. But obviously this one today that does both Solana and Ethereum in addition to Bitcoin is the sort of thing I think that many people like, trading in the stock format and then owning a digital asset without owning an ETF, instead owning it just straight out as a treasury item in the various companies that they might invest in anyway.
Very interesting that QMM was up 195 and change to 207. Octo yesterday had that $40 some odd pop. It pulled back today down nearly 5 to 40.17. Do we know any about the next big announcement? Any other companies considering doing this that you're aware of?
Oh, there's a bunch. There's a company in California that's doing this right now, Live One, LVO. I'm an advisor to them, and they are, in fact, buying every week, every month, Bitcoin, and they're about to branch out into other cryptocurrencies as well. And they run a podcasting network, but they're going to take a lot of the revenue that they get from doing that business and put it into those treasuries, and then perhaps go out and raise more money through that digital asset.
Very interesting. And then the other one that made a splash recently, run by the Trump brothers, right? American Bitcoin moving higher today by about $1 at 931. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, those guys, of course, anything they touch, it's almost as good as Tom Lee. Tom's famous for making great, very bullish calls on all these digital assets. And the one he focuses on the most, of course, these days is Ethereum for Bitmine immersion tech. But the Trump brothers have also really made a name for themselves as lightning rods for bullish activity in anything that they look at and become either board members of or purchase substantial stakes in. So I always am watching what those two are doing.
All right, what about Ethereum, which had that big recovery this year, got close to 5,000, right? Now it's around 4,300 or so. What about Bitmine immersion and the ones that have exposure to Ethereum and Ethereum itself?
Well, Ethereum is still, as far as these digital assets right now, it's my number one holding. I still own Bitcoin, but Ethereum has now overtaken it just by the sheer move that it's made this year. I'm waiting for Solana to really kick in, SOL. It's not like it's doing terrible, but it's at about 210, 212, I believe, per coin. And I think that one is poised to do exceedingly well. But I have not been right about that for the last several months. It's been more of a churn than an explosion.
All right. And what about Apple here? A disappointing announcement. At least it was disappointing on Wall Street anyway, with the iPhone 17 rollout today. The stock's back to around 234.
Yeah. I think a lot of us thought that the iPhone 17, was not really going to be a must-have item, especially if indeed they do have an iPhone Air, which has been rumored for months, if not years. And if they do have an iPhone Air that does come out, I think we're going to see a flood of upgrades for that. But this one, you don't really see as many upgrades when something's just modestly different than the previous version. And I think that's kind of the trap that Mr. Tim Cook is in right now, the CEO of Apple. He's not giving people amazing things. He's giving people something that's just a little bit different than it was previously.
Interesting that Oracle overshadowed Apple today, having its best day since 1999. At Oracle, they're partying since it was It's like it was 1999. Oracle at more than 3 today at 241 and change. Of course, Larry Ellison's son now running Paramount CBS here. What about Oracle here?
Well, I certainly like and think that Oracle's in a great position to take advantage of the surge in AI investments, and they could power an awful lot of that. So I love that for Oracle, and I think that people are more trusting of some of these bigger tech companies being able to continue to innovate in AI, even though some of the smaller ones, of course, could be more nimble. They could also be a little vulnerable. And so I think the advantage Larry Ellison has is he has a very robust security mechanism within his company that makes people, especially corporates, more comfortable with using his software than somebody else's.
All right. Before I ask you about the Bears, any specific places where you're putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, luckily I didn't have money on the Bears, but they did look good in the first 3 quarters, and it was just the fourth quarter that they stopped getting pressure on J.J. McCarthy, and J.J. ripped it wide open in the fourth quarter and ended up beating us. It was a fun game to watch, but not a fun game as a Bears fan. I think overall the stock that I really liked today was Tech Resources, TECK, who is doing that deal with Anglo American to make themselves basically the biggest copper miner in the world. I think that drove both stocks higher, and in particular, I think it will continue to bear fruit for TECK, which will, until they finish the merger, be the symbol that I trade the most in that merger of equals.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that one. And for our listeners who may not realize that you played for the Bears back in the day, what position did you play back then?
I played linebacker back then, and some no-name named Mike Singletary took my job. So when you get beaten out by a Hall of Famer, it doesn't feel quite as bad.
That is fantastic. You do it all, John. Thank you very, very much for joining us live here this afternoon on the biggest day in history for Wall Street. Record highs across the board here. John NAJARIAN, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Have a great evening, sir.
You too. Thank you very much. John NAJARIAN, Dr. J, as he's known on the major television financial networks, co-founder of Market Rebellion, and also author with his brother Pete of the book It's Not an Option, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Yep, there it is. As I said at the start, the hey-ya kind of day on Wall Street. Record highs across the board for the Dow, the S&P 500, and NASDAQ. The Dow 196 points at 45,711. The S&P 500 up 17 at 6,513. And the NASDAQ up another 81 points, building on the record high achieved just yesterday, up to 21,879. The yield in the 10-year note now at 4.08%. The price of gold also hitting record highs above $3,700 an ounce today, right now hovering at about $3,662.80. Silver above $41 an ounce, hitting highs we haven't seen in at least a decade. Silver up 4 cents at $41.38, and platinum up another $3.10 to $1,375.20 an ounce. Crude oil futures barely budging despite the upheaval in the Middle East, which we'll be focusing on very shortly with the Middle East expert Jan Raviv. The price of oil up 16 cents right now at $62.79 a barrel. Checking the cryptos now, we see Bitcoin up about 100 at 111,416. ETH, or Ethereum as it's known, up 11 at 4,313. Doge at the moment at 24 cents, and Solana at 216. Apple moving lower despite the big announcement today for the iPhone 17 and other products. Apple shares pulling back more than $3 at $234 and change. NVIDIA, the magnificent one, up $2.45 at $170.76, the world's most valuable company. We see shares of Oracle having its best day since 1999, up more than $3 at $241.51, overshadowing Apple today. American Bitcoin up nearly $1 at $9.31. IBIT down 48 cents at 63.22. Bitmine Immersion up 81 cents at 44.60. Shares of Octo pulling back today, down nearly $5 at 40.71 after a meteoric rise yesterday. And QMMM was a big star on Wall Street today, popping $195 and change to 207. And now the latest news on 790 KABC.
Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.
Ever wonder how dark the world can really get?
Well, we dive into the twisted, the terrifying, and the true stories behind some of the world's most chilling crimes.
Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Nicole.
Together, we host Wicked and Grim, a true crime podcast that unpacks real-life horrors one case at a time.
With deep research, dark storytelling, and the occasional drink to take the edge off,
we're here to explore the wicked
and reveal the grim. We are Wicked and Grim.
Follow and listen on your favorite podcast platform.
Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Big news in the Middle East. Israel's Air Force carrying out a strike on Hamas's senior political leadership in Qatar. And what's considered a sharp escalation that took the fight to a country closely aligned with the United States. Hamas said its primary leaders in Doha survived the strike, but 5 members were killed, including the son of its senior negotiator. Qatar said a member of its security forces was also killed. The U.S., we're told, was aware of Israel's plans in advance, but the attack drew a rare rebuke from the White House for striking inside a country that has hosted negotiators and sought to bring an end to the war. According to the Wall Street Journal, the strike also reflected a shifting balance of power in the region that has allowed Israel to pursue its rivals with few restraints. Qatar, which hosts the U.S. most important air base in the region, condemned the attack. Joining us live now, Middle East expert Jan RAVIV, former network news correspondent, author of books including Spies Against Armageddon, Every Spy a Prince, about the Israeli intelligence service. His latest book falls into the business category, The Quest for Significance. Dan RAVIV, thank you very much for taking the call live with us here this afternoon.
Yeah, pleasure to be with you on a big day, Frank.
All right, give us your reaction to this latest strike by Israel taking out Hamas's senior political leadership.
Well, I would say that Israel's been hinting at it for several days in saying that leaders of Hamas, as the group that attacked Israel on October 7th, almost 2 years ago, massacred more than 1,200 people in Israel and kidnapped more than 250, they said that the leaders of Hamas are not going to be safe wherever they are. And in recent days, Israeli leaders were saying it more often. Now, that made us think that they're hinting that Israel would strike the Hamas political headquarters, their leaders in Doha, Qatar. And then they did it. Now, the White House said, no, we weren't told in advance. We were only told when the rockets were about to hit. Well, I really think that's President Trump trying to guard his friendship with Qatar. You may recall he visited that Arab country in May. Among other things, he's accepting the gift of a future Air Force One airliner from Qatar. And so he didn't want to let it seem like the U.S. is okay with bombing a target in Qatar. And so I would say that scolding the Israelis that attacking Qatar is not the best idea was kind of mild. I think the U.S., at least President Trump, actually was okay with this.
On the air live with Middle East expert Jan RAVIV, and now there's a concern that what's happened here might make talks to resolve the war in Gaza more difficult, and also the hostages, of course, their fate remains uncertain. What about those important issues?
Oh, they sure are. There are 48 hostages at this point. 20 are believed to be alive. And you have to think about it like, negotiate now with whom? The Israelis were trying to kill, in effect, the negotiators for Hamas, who were working through Qatar as an intermediary. Now, we don't know the whole truth as to who was killed today. Maybe it is only low-level officials, as Hamas is trying to claim. But even Qatar said, despite the fact that we are a country that historically we want to work for peace, we want to be mediators. For now, all talks are suspended. But again, Doha, Qatar said that they're willing to start it again. What choice is there? Meantime, the Israelis are pounding Gaza City, knocking down multi-story buildings there, just trying to achieve what they consider a total victory over Hamas. Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, he says that's the only way to force Hamas to free all the hostages. A lot of Israelis have their doubts about that.
And as you noted, the second anniversary of that horrific terror attack by Hamas on Israel back on October 7th, 2023, that date is approaching here now. And the very next day, the Wall Street Journal laid out Iran's involvement in that attack. And now I see the latest headline here: Iran and UN watchdog reach agreement to resume nuclear inspections. Of course, in recent months, we've seen Iran's nuclear program obliterated. What's your reaction to this latest news here?
Yeah, you don't miss a thing, and it's all connected, Frank, no question about it. It was in June, just 2.5 months ago, that Israel and Iran had their 12-day war that President Trump decided to end by bombing the key nuclear sites in Iran, right? The U.S. Air Force did that, the big bunker busters dropped by B-2 stealth bombers. And so we wondered what would happen next. Does Iran still have any enriched uranium? Would they be open to UN inspectors? It looks like the answer is yes, as though Iran wants a deal, or for a while at least wants to look like it's going to behave. But keep in mind that Iran is the sponsor of, well, Hamas, as you mentioned, Hezbollah in Lebanon. They've been tamed for now. The Houthis in Yemen, right? They're financed by Iran, and they keep launching missiles at Israel, and even did one today. It's a picture that's not over, and Israel says it's fighting a 7-front war. And frankly, Netanyahu wants to be a kind of hero by winning every front. But again, I have to point out, he has a lot of critics in Israel, not least the hostages' families, who would like the war to end, would like to see a deal, and they don't like today's strike at Qatar.
We saw barely a reaction in the oil markets anytime something like this happens. Every time in the past we've seen upheaval in the Middle East, the price of oil reacts dramatically. Today, it's around 62 and change here. It's been holding pretty low since the U.S. and Israel wiped out Iran's nuclear program. What do you see ahead here on that front as far as nervous time again in the oil markets?
Yeah, isn't it amazing? I would say that it's all a matter now of supply and demand. There is the fear that some economies, including the U.S., could be slowing down, so demand for energy could be down. But you're so right, Frank. At times like these, with high tension in the Middle East, you would expect oil prices to go up, and they're not. And it means that somehow the investors who are really smart at that part of the world that so much energy comes from have concluded that war is not going to spread further, and that if you've tamed Iran, it's a good thing. And Israel striking as it did today, that's not going to start a war all over the Middle East, because Israel struck at one building where Hamas terrorist leaders were. So I don't think that's going to cause a widespread war or a lot of panic.
You don't miss anything at Van RAVIV. You do your Mossad Files podcast now as well, in addition to wonderful books, Spies Against Armageddon, Every Spy a Prince, and the latest book also in the business category, The Quest for Significance. Anything that we haven't covered that's catching your attention today?
I just think we should keep an eye as to what President Trump wants. He wants to be a peacemaker in Ukraine. He wants to end the Gaza war. He's really been frustrated. It's quite clear. Mainly, he's been blaming Hamas, and that's why I think that he gave Israel privately a green light to carry out this attack. And, well, as President Trump might say, let's see what happens.
What does the end game look like there for the Gaza area?
Yeah, excellent question, because I think there has to be something on the horizon as to who is going to rebuild Gaza, who is going to rule Gaza in the future. Can there be a Palestinian self-government of some form? Those are all questions. Unfortunately, Netanyahu of Israel didn't want to face those questions. He just wanted to score a victory as a kind of, well, revenge for October 7th 2 years ago. So we really don't know, but it's obvious to me it's going to take hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild the Gaza Strip once this war is over. And I have to think it's going to come from wealthy Arab countries. No deal yet, however.
Dan, thank you very much. It's always great to have you on the air and to hear your voice. Of course, a longtime network news correspondent, and it's been an honor knowing you and working with you over many, many decades. Middle East expert Jan RAVIV, former network news correspondent, author of Spies Against Armageddon, Every Spy a Prince. His latest book is The Quest for Significance, and his podcast, The Mossad Files. Thank you very, very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My great pleasure, Frank.
Out to the freeways now, 790 KBC.
Hey, Bruin fans, want to go behind the scenes with your favorite teams and athletes? How about getting exclusive merch and opportunities to enter sweepstakes like sideline access at the Rose Bowl? Introducing Blue and Gold Society, UCLA Athletics fan membership program created to support Bruin student athletes. Members receive benefits like exclusive gear, videos featuring insider stories, and incredible experiences courtesy of UCLA Athletics. Sign up today at blueandgoldsociety.com.
Hi, I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, host of the Stacking Benjamins podcast.
Today, we're going to talk about what if you came across $50,000? What would you do?
Put it into a tax-advantaged retirement account.
The mortgage, that's what we do.
Make a down payment on a home.
Something nice.
Buying a vehicle.
A separate bucket for this addition that we're adding.
$50,000, I'll buy a new podcast
You'll
partner.
buy new friends. And we're done. Thanks for playing, everybody. We're out of here.
Stacking Benjamins. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues. 790 KBC. Record-shattering day for the stock market. The Dow, the S&P 500, and NASDAQ hitting all-time highs. This on some big economic news out today, and potentially enormous economic news, including the U.S. Supreme Court today agreeing to decide the legality of President Trump's sweeping global tariffs, setting up a major test of one of President Trump's boldest assertions of executive power that has been central to his economic and trade agenda. Also, we got a revision on the jobs reports over the past year. For the first time since the 2020 pandemic lockdowns, there are now more unemployed people than job openings in the U.S., with the Labor Department just revising downward 911,000 jobs out over 12 months already reported jobs data. Joining me live now is prominent Los Angeles area economist Dr. Christopher Thornberg, the founding partner of Beacon Economics based here in L.A. Chris, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Oh, it's always great to be with you, Frank.
Wonderful to have you with us here. First, on this tariff question and the possibility that the U.S. Treasury might have to refund $1 trillion, which would be unprecedented, of course. The Supreme Court now going to be taking this question up. Give us your thoughts on what's playing out here.
Well, look, at one level, I think that any objective look at the statute that Trump has been using to levy these tariffs would seem, well, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be applicable to the current situation. He's calling it an emergency. There's really very little sense of an emergency. Ergo, why does he get to use this law? So that would say he's going to lose, and yeah, we're going to have to pay that money back. On the other hand, let's keep something else in mind, which is the Supreme Court has certainly handed Trump a bunch of surprising victories, including, of course, the one just the other day where they said it was okay for ICE to run around and basically profile people on the basis of their race and language, which, candidly to me, sounds like a violation somewhere in the Constitution. So I don't really know where this is going to go, to say the least. Now, obviously, with that said, the stock market thinks it's great news. But then again, the stock market didn't mind that much when the tariffs went into place in the first place. So what are they reacting to?
On there live with Dr. Christopher Thornberg, principal partner of Beacon Economics here in Los Angeles. Thank you for that thorough assessment here, as always. Now, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the federal court in Washington ruled back in August that President Trump overreached, invoking that 1977 law that you mentioned, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, to impose the tariffs, undercutting a major priority for the president in his second term. So the Supreme Court will now be taking that up. There's going to be a lot of drama, certainly, in that leading up to that ruling. The other big story today on the job front, we've never seen a revision like this. Maybe you have, since you've been around and following this even more closely than I have, a downward revision of 911,000 jobs over the past 12 months. Your reaction to that big news today?
We kind of knew it was coming. Look, we have two ways of measuring employment. One is the household data, which comes from the CPS. The other one is the CES data. The CES data over the last couple of years has been adding a suspiciously high number of jobs compared to the household data. And that does make you think that something was going wrong with that survey. So, of course, when this came out, I think for anybody studying the numbers, this wasn't really a surprise. Now, mind you, it doesn't mean that the nation lost jobs. We went from kind of a year-over-year, March-to-March original gain of 1.7 million, and now they're talking about it being a little less than a million. It's still positive job growth, just at a much slower basis. Again, it's spread out over a year period. So no one should look at this revision and think that, wow, all of a sudden we're losing a bunch of jobs. We just didn't add all these jobs that the statistics had originally told us over the course of the last 18 months or so.
Very interesting. On the air live with economist Dr. Christopher Thornberg. What is the real job picture? Looks like California, as it has for years, has I think, is it one of the, or if not the highest unemployment rate compared to the national average? Certainly, we've always been higher, right? What is the job picture looking like here?
Well, look, California and the United States have not seen a lot of new jobs, but this isn't because of labor demand, it's because of labor supply. This has been a long-run problem in California. We've been failing to build enough housing supply for 20 years, and those limitations on the supply of housing has basically created a situation where California's labor force has barely grown over the last 5 years. I mean, all the time we hear about how Texas keeps adding so many more jobs than California. Why is that? The answer is over the last 5 years, Texas has added 1.7 million people to the labor force. California's added 120,000. And that is strictly because of the fact that the state just will not build enough housing to fill needs. And as a result of that, we've really held our economy back. Now, the higher unemployment rate you were referring to, that's really a function of us being a large ag state. All ag states have higher unemployment rates. But it also has something else to do with the state's minimum wage, one of the highest in the nation. And that has left us with one of the highest youth unemployment rates in the nation as well. Kids, particularly at risk, kids from at-risk neighborhoods, are the ones who don't get jobs when minimum wage is this high. And that really hurts these kids on a lifetime basis, because getting that early work experience is so important to life development. But that said, these are all structural issues, not cyclical ones. California, like the United States, continues to grow. We're just not growing as fast as we normally do. And again, that goes back to the idea that when our labor force is not growing.
Speaking of building houses, of course, the massive recovery continues following the January firestorms. And I know you did something big with the BizFed Institute recently, and Kevin Harbour was on this program. And how is the effort going there along the coast and in Altadena?
It's way too slow. It has been crawling along, and it's all due. Whenever we talk about housing, we always want to focus on affordability issues, right? We always want to focus on who can't afford housing or this kind of stuff. And even when it comes to thinking about reforming the home production process, we talk about big things like CEQA reform. Well, a whole bunch of the problems in housing production basically boil down to the fact that we have so convoluted the home building system that even the very bureaucrats who are supposed to be overseeing the process don't really understand what's going on. And thus it could take years and years just to get basic permits pulled, just because it's so confusing and so complicated. If the city would make an effort to deregulate, to just make it simpler and easier to build stuff in this county, there'd be a lot more action, not just in these neighborhoods that so desperately need to be rebuilt, but really every place in the county where we need more housing.
Christopher Thornberg, thank you very, very much for joining us live here on all these big stories here today, and look forward to many more conversations. That is prominent Los Angeles area economist Dr. Christopher Thornberg, founding partner of Beacon Economics, based right here in Los Angeles. Chris, thank you again very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Anytime, Frank. Always happy to be with you.
Thank you very, very much. Record-shattering day for stocks. The Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ settling at all-time highs. Gold popping above 3,700 for the very first time. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. And I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here live on Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
Hey Bruin fans, want to go behind the scenes with your favorite teams and athletes? How about getting exclusive merch and opportunities to enter sweepstakes like sideline access at the Rose Bowl? Introducing Blue and Gold Society, UCLA Athletics fan membership program created to support Bruin student athletes. Members receive benefits like exclusive gear, videos featuring insider stories, and incredible experiences courtesy of UCLA Athletics. Sign up today at blueandgoldsociety.com.